Hey, deserving listeners, sister wives, let's see what happens and see what comes out of my face as I watch.
We've been through some things with her that have helped us get on the same page, basically understand each other. What we're hoping is that we can have her do that with us regarding our business, kind of get some communication out there. Might actually solve some personal problems dealing with the business.
All right, they're going to therapy. I was wondering if they would continue seeing that therapist, and it looks like they are, which is good.
In marriage and life, but now you're getting it in where dollars and cents are involved, and that's got to be interesting.
Ultimately, somebody has to be the boss. Because my wives don't want to be subordinate to one another, I have to be the boss.
In a plural family, you should not have any one of the wives ruling.
Okay, this is in line with what I was saying in an earlier video about my experience of collaborative efforts like this, that you have to have, it's a lot easier if the organization has, even if it's a small organization like this, if you have one person that is the leader. Now, that doesn't mean that they are the one who vetoes and makes all the decisions, but they're the one that, because as a program director at my university, I saw how these kinds of things worked out because, we're all professors, we're all therapists. We're not super interested in being authority figures, especially over our colleagues, some of whom, when I was program director, all my subordinates were older than me, 30 years older than me. They were professors and therapists while I was still in grade school, that kind of thing. And so, the authority and the it's not like your typical workplace where there's a boss and then there's employees. But I found that if we all just considered it like a flat authority org chart, then we wouldn't get anything done. Everyone would just have, too many cooks in the kitchen. You need someone at the very least to step forward and start coordinating. And I would do that sometimes. I'd be like, I don't have a vested interest in which one we choose, but we have to choose one. So let's figure out what to do, because by the end of this meeting, we have to have a choice. And so I would coordinate that. And, there's a bit of steering and emotional work that you have to do with people. So you can't just be like, we're all equal, or we all have the same role, might be another way to put it. Now, what Cody is saying is that we're all equal, but they all look to me typically as the leader because that's the way we want it. It's also the way the AUB will say it's supposed to be. I mean, I was saying earlier that Christine Pereira, the former member of AUB, told me recently that, I'm looking at my notes to see, but she told me that women can't get into heaven. What did she say? Women can't get into heaven on their own. They must have a man invite them through to heaven. And, so not only does that tell you, the members, a lot about the agency of women and the power of women and where they sit in God's eyes or the community's eyes, but also just sort of tells you something about who you're supposed to be and the way you're supposed to act. And so they will look to him, and he, at times, I think, is okay with that or revels in that sort of superiorness or something. But other times, he doesn't like that, and he's talked about it, and I believe him that he's just like, I don't want to always be in charge. I want people to work things out on their own. And so I think with the business, it kind of became that, where he noticed in their, negotiating of the different actions that he's just like, and I also think that he doesn't really care that much. He has his own job. And so it kind of was like, well, the sister wives now have to negotiate who's going to be in charge. Robin obviously was the one most interested in it, so so in a way she was in charge, but they weren't supposed to admit that to themselves because of the way that they're supposed to, or the unspoken rule of sister wives, like no one is in charge of it. But that's ridiculous. I mean, if I were there, I'd be like, it's not about who's the boss. It's about capitalizing on different people's strengths and their roles. I would try to tie it to the way that they parent, because they do recognize that well, Mary is good with this kind of parenting and Janelle is good with this and Christine is good with that. That doesn't mean that one is more in power and there's not harmony, but you just have to figure out where your role is, and then that's how organizations work better. So anyway.
Speak over any of the other wives. For that reason, Robin can never be CEO, as much as I would completely support her.
Right, that would be really frustrating. It's just like, Robin, you're obviously the leader here, so let's just make you the leader, and then you can veto us and move ahead with things while including us, but you're the one in charge. But we can't do that because our religion or our mission doesn't allow that. Doesn't make any sense.
And when I said that Robin is the CFO, Janelle got upset.
I didn't hear my role mentioned. I mean, my name mentioned anywhere with the financial. And so I'm like, well, then what do I do?
You're saying when I was asking about who the CFO is?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, okay, well, then what am I doing?
Okay, I think this is illuminating a theme and a pattern and a problem in the family. I think they're talking about, the therapist asked, who's in charge of the finances? And they all agreed. They only showed us Cody saying this, but I think there was a larger conversation because Janelle's kind of referring to everyone talking, that everyone said, well, Robin is the one that is in charge of the finances because she's in charge of the accounts receivable and all that kind of stuff. And then it sounds like later on at some point, a minute later or 10 minutes later, Janelle chimes in and says, I'm bothered by that. I'm wondering what my role is. I think Janelle feels underappreciated. I'm not sure. But I think that this points to a pattern that I have been building more data around, because each of the members have a role and there are pros and cons, and there's always going to be some cons that will play out. And I think for Janelle, the pro for her is I think she tends to be more easygoing unless there's a trigger for anxiety, and then she's not easygoing, obviously. But I think more often than not, she just goes along with the crowd. But there's a part of her that isn't exactly cool with that and feels ignored. I also think she's more on the inactive side of just life in general. I've been wondering if she's depressed a little bit, or there's no indication of that directly, but of just sort of checking out. When they did that family sculpture thing and the therapy stuff, she talked about how she had essentially slowly given up on participating pretty heavily, but then during that activity, she's like, I'm going to start participating, and that felt good, and now I feel like I'm part of the family. And so I think this is illuminating that, I think.
Why am I up till midnight putting together the damn financials for this plan if I'm not really CFO? Or I don't like that title. It's just a designation of what my department is. So what? I'm just a floater who helps out wherever?
Yeah, from the edit, her reaction seems more emotional than otherwise. If Robin is not officially in charge of finances, but she's overseeing the main finances, which I think Janelle wants her to be doing, because I don't think Janelle wants to be as involved as Robin is. So I don't think it's like taking, anyway. And then Janelle could just in her head say, well, yeah, I mean, Robin does more, or she's doing more of the critical finance, but I'm doing a lot of things too. I think what Janelle wants is like, okay, well, then I would like a title. I would like I think it's recognition, I want to, because that's what she's essentially getting at. She's like, what am I, just this, like, what does she say again?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, okay, well, then what am I doing? Why am I up till midnight putting together the damn financials for this plan if I'm not really CFO? Or I don't like that title. It's just a designation of what my department is. So what? I'm just a floater I'm
just a floater. And I don't know who she's looking at. I'd be curious if I want the camera to zoom out a little bit. Is she looking at Cody? Is she looking at Mary? Is she just looking at the therapist? Because if she's looking at Cody, that's different than if she's just kind of looking at everyone, And yeah, I think that's what emotionally is happening. I think that's a deeper issue of just, who am I in this family? What am I? I think for her, she is disillusioned, and maybe with the addition of Robin, it's been this underlying thing of like, well, if he's now with her, then what am I exactly?
Helps out wherever. You know, I've been really evolving the last few years, and I'm trying to find those safer ways to say, well, look, this is how I feel. You completely invalidated me.
Am I correct, Janelle, that you're also...
So the first part I'm encouraged by, she's evolving the last few years. I think that means that she's starting to recognize her needs, which is great. And then she says, you completely invalidated me. Either they cut that out, or that's an interpretation, a distortion that is based on how she feels, generally speaking, and she's just using this moment as a lightning rod for all those feelings, because it didn't look like anyone was invalidated. The therapist asked everybody, who's the CFO, who's the chief financial officer? And Cody said, well, Robin is, because, you know, she's the one who does all the accounts receivable. And it sounded like, yeah, well, that would be the chief financial officer. And I mean, I don't know, but even if it was a ridiculous thing to say, all Janelle would have to do is raise her hand. It's like, no, she's not, plus, even if Cody was wrong about that, that's not like an invalidation of her as a person. You know what I mean? It could just be Cody just doesn't know the goings on of, that's quite a leap from, what happened to, so that doesn't invalidate her feelings. It just says that there's a bigger problem afoot that, maybe the therapist will pick up on.
So saying, though, that you would like your unique strength in here.
I'm just looking for a niche that I fit in. I am not creative. I have no desire to develop products, none.
Do you only see yourself as financial, though?
That's all I see. I do have an interest in the numbers and figuring out how it's all working.
But CFO makes the
It's notable that they've had this business for months, maybe years, and they're just now having this conversation, which doesn't surprise me. And I've been here before as a therapist. This isn't an indictment on my clients, or it's just a thing that I think happens, that, you're in the hustle and bustle of life and you're on the surface often. You come into a therapy office, like my therapy office, and there's these concentrated questions and there's no distractions. And you start having these very fundamental conversations that it's strange you've never had. It's strange that as the sister wives, I guess including Cody, have never sat down and said, okay, the delegation. It sounds like they were all kind of in the boat of, we are all doing everything, which, maybe you can pull off, but why do it that way? Especially if Janelle has no interest in the creative side and more interested in the financial side. Like, I'm guessing that for Robin, that would be a relief. Oh, great. Because I want to do more of the creative side or whatever. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. So it's that time of year again. It's September, back to school, time to learn new things. And if you're a fan of this podcast, then I'm guessing you like to learn new things. But you might find that although you've learned a lot, you have a hard time applying this knowledge to better your life. This can be frustrating, you might know why you have a particular psychological issue, but you don't know how to use that knowledge to work on the issue. Well, that's where therapy comes in. A therapist can help you see how this knowledge applies to you specifically. And therapy also just gives you the time to focus on yourself outside of daily stressors. Well, one place you can find a therapist is at BetterHelp. If you're thinking of giving therapy a try, it's definitely worth checking out BetterHelp. So rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
decision on the money.
No, they don't.
No.
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think you realize that the role of the financial person is really just to present the numbers and just show what the numbers show. So I think once he understood that, he's like, oh, well, okay, well, that can be Janelle. I can see the advice given about
It also illuminates, because what I saw was 5 people being asked a question by the therapist, and Cody saying, well, to me, Robin seems like the CFO. But meaning that any of them could have said, well, to me, but the way that this family is, because of the dogma of the polygamous, I don't want to say cult, but religious group, is that whatever he says is like, and I think literally the former member of this group told me that, I don't know if it's this exactly, but if the husband, if the father says something, it's akin to God saying it. I don't think it's far off from that. It might literally be that. So by the, if I'm the therapist, everyone has the same power and the same weight in terms of their opinion or their point of view. But, and I think Cody doesn't necessarily recognize that. I think he would have been more careful about the way answering that question. And this is heavily edited, so there's that. But in terms of what I saw, I think Cody was just like, I don't know, I think Robin is. But to the sister wives, when he says something like that, it is now decreed by God that Robin is the CFO. And so Janelle's like, wait, what? Instead of Robin just being like, no, you're wrong, or that's not the way I see it. Plus, Cody only said she's the CFO because the therapist prompted everyone to identify the CFO. I think if Cody had his own druthers, he would say, no one's the CFO. Everyone works together. So anyway, I would hope that the family and with the therapist will understand that what they're talking about is important, but there's a much more important underlying emotional field that is being illuminated. The other thing is that I think that there was an opportunity that the therapist gave Janelle to talk about more general feelings that she has. But I think because of all of them, really, their denial of their feelings is such that, and I've seen this in therapy, and I saw a little snippet of it, I'll rewind it, but there was if I were Janelle, I would take a beat and say like, yeah, maybe I feel this way in general or something. But when you have all these barriers and shame and uncertainty about what's beneath, when someone asks a question for you to go there, there will be resistance and they'll sort of double down on the surface stuff. Let's rewatch this.
last few years, and I'm trying to find those safer ways to say, well, look, this is how I feel. You completely invalidated me.
Am I correct, Janelle, that you're also saying, though, that you would like your unique strength in here?
I'm just looking for a niche that I fit in. I am not
Right. That was edited, so I can't tell. But the way it was edited, the therapist is trying to get deeper, not talking about the surface stuff, but it sounds like you want recognition for your unique place. Because I'm guessing the therapist is thinking, in addition to the role in this business, there's a deeper thing there. And Janelle doesn't go with that, right? Goes, well, no, even kind of opposing a little bit the way she, well, no, I'm just looking for because to go deeper is foreign and scary and denied. That's what I'm saying. And that's a theme with them. They seem quite, and it's not unusual for Americans to be this way by any means. But I would say they're towards one end of the spectrum on that.
advice given about definition of duties and having a stewardship, that you have all the tools that you need to drive something and not have to be texting somebody or calling somebody all the time and saying, hey, do you have this information, or what do you think of this? Or, we'll bring it through. I mean, that's where Cody would come into play. He's the one who's getting all the information, and then we are meeting together as a committee, but it's like
I have felt in the dark.
Yeah, that was my impression. That, well, it looks like Janelle's pretty into the business. I don't know if I knew that exactly, but Robin's definitely into the business, and it sounds like Janelle's really into the business. Mary might be the only one who is at least foundationally not as into the business, but Janelle seems to have a lot of energy. Christine was doing that real estate thing, so it seems like Janelle's pretty animated about wanting to do the business, and I didn't realize that they saw Cody as even a member of the business, really, because the way it was operating, it didn't seem that way. But on paper, they're like, yeah, Cody is he's the president, so he makes all the decisions, but when they would have those conversations, he would flub it or something, because he's not, I don't think he's interested. He also has a full-time job, from my understanding. And so he's like trying to play that role, and then he would screw it up and they would all go, no. And he'd be like, oh, okay, well, whatever you want to do. And so that is reflected by, he's just like, I feel like I'm in the dark. And yeah, it's just interesting that they're trying to make the business the same as the way the dogma is about the marriages, but none of them or very few of them have wanted that. Cody accepts the head of the household role as a father and a husband, but I don't think so they just never had a conversation about it. And maybe they felt like if they allowed for a conversation, it would open up a conversation about that role of marriage and parents that would threaten that. I don't know.
Cody, could you imagine if there is a division of responsibility, meeting with Mary alone on customer service, knowing that you would inform the others, but feeling...
I don't know why the therapist is getting this specific. Maybe it's just a thought experiment, but this is not where I would go. I would raise the question of, let's start from the beginning, and what type of organization do you want to have? Because I would not assume that, at least I would introduce that as a flexibility. You don't have to have an organization where he's the president and everyone else is equal, like that. You could do it that way, but there are other options. Just as like that could be a novel kind of mind-blowing thing to them, I think, a little bit. But to phrase it this way is to put him in charge. And maybe the therapist is trying to honor that culture and their decision. And I'm only seeing little snippets, but yeah, I can't imagine that this is going to go well. What I want him to say is, I don't know if I can make that choice. I don't know if I can make those kinds of decrees, because I don't know enough about the business. I don't know enough about what everyone, or I would throw it to others. I'd be like, oh, that's a good question. What does everyone else want? Because if he just says something, I don't think it's going to go well.
Comfortable making a decision by yourself?
I feel stymied because everything we've done has always had to be by committee.
Is that where you guys want to go?
No, I don't like
Yeah, that's my observation too. Now, this isn't really therapy. This is more like a business consultation meeting, which happens sometimes in therapy. And of course, there's bigger implications here. But I'm kind of glad that he said that every decision has to be made by committee. Yeah. And I've been saying this from the beginning, that Robin should be in charge and there should be explicit delegation of roles. Sounds like Janelle only wants to do the financial stuff and she likes to do it. Okay. Sounds like Robin really likes the creative side. I think Christine also likes the creative side. And then I don't think Cody should be involved at all. Maybe he's just like the figurehead, or I don't know.
Very few decisions I'm ever allowed to make in this family.
Can you make decisions with the people to whom you give the responsibilities?
I've never been allowed to be in charge of this family. What the hell, are we going to really get me in charge of this business? Really?
Somebody's got to be the head. Somebody's got to be...
Okay, I think he's melting down a little bit. He's expressing frustration about a much larger thing, which, I've never been allowed to be in charge of the family. That's an exaggeration, silliness. That's not what I've seen. But I think what I'm intuiting that he's saying is, you tell me I'm supposed to be in charge, but then, and I don't really even want to be in charge of all those things. And then when I exert my authority, you don't let me be in charge. So I don't know what I'm supposed to do, That's true about the business, I think, in particular. Other things, I think they manage those roles, at least on paper, on the edit, well enough. Like the parenting decisions, I don't know. There's not enough data there. But, this is good family therapy session.
the leader. I really want that to be Cody.
When have I been in charge of this family? When? When have we?
Well, that's interesting. I didn't know it. So Robin just said, it was a little quiet, that she wants Cody to be in charge of the business. That's interesting. Yeah, as an outside, as a therapist, I don't care. It's about the process. But as a citizen watching this, Robin should be in charge. Cody shouldn't have anything to do with it because he doesn't care. I don't think his skill set isn't made for it. Maybe he's a good salesperson, like a good person to go to the retail places and sell the stuff. But Robin wants him to be in charge, either because of the dogma of the religious group or, obviously, well, not obviously, but I think the most likely reason for that is that Robin knows that if she's in charge, that makes her the jerk-face new person who's now controlling everything. So that's interesting. I think that illuminates a lot right there, that Robin wants to be integrated. She wants to be together. She wants them all to work on this project together because she wants the project. But I also think she sees it as acceptance, that teenage thing that I was referring to earlier. But she doesn't want to be telling the other sister wives what to do because that would, she would predict that wouldn't go over well, which is good. So she's like, well, I want Cody to do it. And maybe I can sort of influence that a little bit. But Cody is like a reluctant authority. And when he does, and I've seen it, when he does say, okay, this is what we're doing, they have a tendency to say no, either because he's oblivious, because he just doesn't know much about this, or they just don't like him stepping into their thing, So this is good. Let's see where this goes.
Ever not made every single decision by committee? When?
But a CEO doesn't unilaterally rule. He takes all the consensus and makes a decision.
Sure.
How do you not do that right now in our family? You
I
take all the information.
I don't feel like I've ever been empowered.
Okay, that's interesting. So Janelle is saying, you do that all the time in this family. You take in all the things, and that's my observation too. I think he's melting down because he feels blamed and he feels hurt. And there have been times when he wanted to exert control or his opinion, and he would be, shot down, which, it's going to happen. But yeah, I don't know if I've said this in a video, but I would hate a role like that. It's so distancing to be put in that position. One, it's such a, I want to, with me and my wife, I don't want authority. I want to be together on things, and we have our roles, there's some things where she has more expertise and can move forward without even consulting me about, and vice versa. But I don't want to be like, but on paper and in the religion, you can't do anything without his approval, and everything has to be approved by him. So that's a tremendous amount of pressure, and it's super ridiculous. Of course, for the women, that doesn't feel great, but also there's a pro to that, because for the women, they don't have to be responsible for anything, and if they're worried about pissing off, anyway, but he's melting down. Another possibility is that he has a controlling streak, and he's expressing frustration about not having the ability to dictate and command. It kind of sounds that way, right?
As the head of this family, ever. It's a lot of what's coming out here. I'm sorry, probably isn't factual. It's a lot of emotional vomit. Nancy's here. I feel safe. She's our family counselor, so I'm going to puke on everybody.
That's interesting that he said, well, Nancy's here. Because he's always in charge. He not only has to be the parent for all the kids, he has to kind of be a parent to all the sister wives. That's what hierarchies are, right? And now that there's an authority, Nancy, he can let go and be safe and unleash, that's a lot of self-awareness that he just exhibited there. I mean, I don't know how long this is after this session, but he's saying that's a lot of vomit, and none of that is factual. That's just all emotional talk. And I'm just letting it out, and I'm not making any sense. It's not true what I'm saying. It's more, it feels that way. So that's hopefully he told the sister wives that too.
How would it look different if you're running this business and you really are the boss with 4 competent, committed women working with you?
Probably doesn't look any different, really. Because I'd still want to know where they were at on it. I don't feel like I have permission to make decisions ever. We actually have to establish the roles in order to actually.
Okay, well, let's adjourn there. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.